Shalom. Couple of things that come into this Parshat, and one of them was what was Lot doing at the doors of the city, and there is a Drash that says that we have to remember that he was saved along with all the things that the king used to have, so they appoint him like a supervisor who was coming in and out of the city. So that's why he was there, because only people that have business or are important were at the entrance of the city. So that's one of the reasons, and it matched why he was there. The other thing is that because of his time that he lived with Abraham, okay, he recognized the two men as people that they were sent by God. Okay, so that's, and knowing the culture, or knowing what the way they live in at the city, that's why he says, come to my house, don't stay outside, because he knew what's going to happen, and that confirms that how bad the situation was there. I mean, it was beyond repair. There was no way of saving this people, and that action led him that he took this Malak to his house, led him to save him and his family. Now, when they say, do you have anybody else in your house? We know that there were Malak, but there's a lot of kinds, and there's like 10 kinds of Malaks, and these were humans. Humans sent by God, because if they were directly representing Hashem, then they will not ask, who do you have? So so that's why they say, who else do you have? Take him away from here, get him. Now, when he went to his daughter's fiance, I say that, they did not believe him. Why? Because they were into their ways of the city, that, man, nothing's going to happen to us. That's we're strong. Look who we are. That's the kind of thinking that they had, and so that's why they did not pay attention to him. So when they at the end, these two Malak, you got pity on Lot, that even took them by the hand and get him out. Said, this is going to happen. But because they did Hesed with him, so they were repaid. The other thing that come to my attention is something that we can learn something, is that when they were on the way out, it says, don't look back. Don't look back. And what happened is because they didn't want, and they want to know or to see what was happening to the city. Okay, so who turned back? The wife. Why did she do that? She did it because she did not want to let go the ways that city taught her. Looking back, and the lesson here for us right now is that when we come, we're here because Hashem chooses us, not because we were pretty, because we were whatever, smart. No, because He chose each one of us to be on His path, to learn the Torah, to learn His way, to live by His teachings. Okay, alone. So that's something that we cannot be. Once we are here, we cannot be looking back of what we left. Yeah, there's a lot of people that we love that are still in the Christianity world, but hey, it's not their call. They're not called yet. Even when you talk to them, and they are on their ways. they already put a defense, put a shield on it, then they will not let you in. Because when they I say they open the door, then you can go and talk to them. But when they close the door, there's nothing they can do. Nothing we can do. That's why that's in that moment is when applies the saying that it says, don't give pearls to the dogs, because they don't know what to do with it. So we have that lesson that we cannot be looking back of what we left. We cannot be sorrow of the way we used to do it. We just come to do the service. And when do we do Avodah Hashem? Every day, starting with the Shaharit. We do it. But then the thing is that we have to do it not mechanical. You cannot be mechanical about this. We have to know exactly what we're doing. We're not the no, we have to know that there is a connection. We are making our soul richer by every time we do our Avodah Hashem. So that's something that we have to be aware of it. But we have to cut ourselves not to caught into the routine of doing it just because we have to do it. Yeah, we do Shahari, Minha, Arbit, and Shabbat before time. Okay, but it has to be, we have to understand that we are in a connection with Hashem. That's what we have to be aware of. And we have to force ourselves consciously to do that.
Shalom.
Hello.
This week's Parsha Vayera means and he appeared. The first verse begins with Abraham sitting at the entrance of his tent. It reads, "Now the Lord appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he was sitting at the entrance of the tent. The day was hot." At this point, Abraham has had circumcision 2 days ago, and he is 99 years old. The Talmud says that God drew the sun out of its sheath so that no one would bother Abraham while he was recovering. But Abraham loved hospitality. He was so eager for guests that he went right to the door of his tent. He waited there. And he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, 3 men were standing beside him. And he saw and he ran toward them from the entrance of the tent, and he prostrated himself to the ground. When Abraham saw the travelers, he didn't wait for them to come to the tent. Instead, he got up and ran to them. And he prostrated himself for them, showing dedication to his guests. And he said, "My lords, if only I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass on from beside your servant. Please let a little water be taken and bathe your feet and recline under the tree, and I will take a morsel of bread and sustain your hearts." And he took a calf, tender and good, and he gave it to the youth, and he hastened to prepare it. And he took cream and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and he placed them before them, and he was standing them under the tree, and they ate. Abraham did so much for his guests, even though he had so many servants that could have done it all for him. He modeled hospitality like nobody else. A story in Genesis Rabbah also shows how he used this hospitality to teach others about God. After they ate and drank from his table, Abraham would say, "Now let us bless God." They would ask, "What should we say?" He replied, "Say, blessed is the God of the universe, from whose bounty we have eaten." If the guest agreed, he would eat and drink and go on his way. If he refused to bless God, Abraham said, "In that case, pay me for the meal." The guest would ask, "How much do I owe you?" Abraham replied, "Here in the desert where prices are high, a pitcher of wine is 10 coins, a pound of meat is 10 coins, a loaf of bread is 10 coins. The guests would immediately consent to bless God rather than pay such exorbitant prices. Now compare the hospitality of Abraham to the sinfulness of Sodom. The Talmud says that they had beds for the travelers to sleep on, and if the traveler was too short, they would stretch them out. If they were too long, they would shorten them. spit on the bed. In Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it says, in Sodom it was decreed, whoever hands a piece of bread to a pauper or stranger shall be burned at the stake. Clotie, a daughter of Lot, was married to one of the leading citizens of Sodom. One day she saw a pauper starving in the street, and her soul was saddened over him. What did she do? Every day when she went to draw water from the well, she would take some of the food from her home in her pitcher and feed the pauper. But the people of Sodom wondered, this pauper, how is he surviving? Eventually the matter became known, and she was taken out to be burned, and her cries rose to the divine throne. This is why it says in the Torah, and the Lord said, since the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah has become great. So I think we should learn from this. We should try to be like Abraham, try to be hospitable and loving and caring for others and our guests, and not like the people of Sodom who were uncaring and who punished others for nothing. Shabbat Shalom.
Awesome drash, Rafi. Shabbat Shalom. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So in this portion, it kind of gives us a glimpse into the power of prayer. In Judaism, we have a dichotomy of beliefs. It's not a religion of, it's a specific belief, and you have to believe that. And if you don't believe that, then you're not a Jew. No, there's some foundational beliefs, but even those can be, questioned to an extent. Okay, there's some absolutes, but that's not necessarily what we're going to discuss today. But what I'm just going to discuss today, but during this portion, there are some people that take what's called low-hanging fruit, right? And so there's because the men of Sodom acted a certain way, they said, well, it's that particular sin. There's a sin that is a sin unto death. We're talking about, it meets a certain criteria of people that are still doing those things today. I call them alphabet people because they add a different letter. It changes, seems to be week to week. We're not supposed to hate these people. We're not supposed to wish them harm or anything like that. It's one of the sins that Hashem says that the earth itself spits people out. Okay, but that's not the focus. The focus is that it seems to be that in the Midrash, and we kind of read, like Rafi mentioned, the sin was inhospitality. It was the anti-Abraham society, right? Where Abraham would offer water, they would cut people, throw dirt in people's water. It seems to be that Hashem absolutely hates robbery. He destroyed the world on a case of robbery, and it seems to be that he destroyed Sodom pretty much on account of robbery, in a sense. So we need to be careful not to engage in any type of robbery or anything that could be considered robbery. So what can we glean out of this story? Okay, I said that I take it in that it's about prayer. Okay, now some of the sages say that, and this was done so that people that everyday Jews would do the liturgy, that we would do the 3 prayers a day, right? And some rabbis say that if you're going to pray, you need to pray what's in the prayer books, and that's it. Not allowed to pray anything else. The reason why that was said was because they were trying to get people to be not so charismatic, as it were. Okay, there was different streams of Judaism. especially bringing up around the time of the Baal Shem Tov, where unlearned people finally realized, oh, I have access to Hashem. I can pray however I want, And, people like the Vilna Gaon, said, hey, look, rightly, like Atzalah, who said last week that people were taking it out of context and saying, okay, well, here's all these learned people. They don't care to pray in a Jewish way, and they're just going out into the forest and screaming and yelling or clapping their hands, without actually understanding the Hasidic way of a prayer. It may seem like foolishness. It's like a Baptist, going to a Pentecostal meeting or something like that. Okay, so let's look at what happened with Abraham. Okay, Abraham was told by Hashem, and we don't necessarily want to get into the angelology or the what this entity was, but says that he spoke to Hashem. So was it a mediary like Memtet, or was it Hashem? We don't know. But anyways, the message was getting across that Hashem was going to check out to see the report of Sodom, and if he was like, that's unbelievable. So he had to make sure that he had to see it for himself, and he gave them a chance to redeem themselves, right? So the bargain was, Abraham went to Hashem and he said, will you destroy it on the count of 50? And we know the story, it goes down all the way to 10. Sodom and Gomorrah was not just one city. It was an amalgamation of 5 different cities, okay? So if you take 5 divided by 10, or 5 divided by 50, that gives you 10. So that's a minion, right? So this is the traditional. He couldn't go below, he started the minimum 10. He's like, well, Colin said, let me go a little bit farther, into where there was a righteous. He went down to basically where there was 2 in each city, okay, because the Torah, the Tanakh, and the Besorah seem to indicate on a matter of 2 witnesses, a matter will be established, right? That's why he couldn't go down to 5, right? And Hashem agreed. Hashem said, if I find 2 righteous in each city, he didn't say that, he said 10. But you can basically expound on that and say it's 2 in each city, okay? So when the destruction came, what happened, right? So Hashem got Lot and the daughters that were in his house. That goes to show that if you're in a house and you're under a covering, that'll protect you. All the rest of his family, all the rest of his sons and daughters that were out in Sodom and that were not in his house were not saved. It was just his wife and his 2 daughters, right? And that wasn't enough to save his wife. But anyway, so what happens during their escape? What happens during their escape is he bargains with an angel, and he says, "Hey, look, let me go over to the city because I don't want to go all the way to the mountains, right?" And the angel agrees. So the angel agrees. So that means one person kept that city from destruction. And he looked back figuratively, and he said, "Look, this isn't safe as well." So he's like, "I'm going to give this city up." And the city was not destroyed until he left the city, and he went on out into the mountains. The Yetzer Hara will tell us, that we're not that good, or we look at ourselves and we compare ourselves with sometimes these great Tzaddiks, but we can look and see a lot. This is a guy that he was not the most righteous man, right? But in the context of the people that he was around, he was considered righteous enough to save the city on his account. Okay, that the other city that he went to, and then he went into the situation with his daughters. But I think it's very very positive, very uplifting to know that just our very presence, if we're doing the mitzvot, we're doing the trying to live as a Jew and praying to Hashem and asking people to be saved, asking people to be protected, that he may consider you and me to be the reason why our community, our city, our town, our subdivision, why judgment doesn't come. So let us all stand in the gap. This week, I apologize. I had a very busy week, and I forgot to put out the notifications to pray on Monday, which is 30 days after the massacre. So if any men come together, if we could, to pray Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, and Yizkor for martyrs on Monday. On Monday, I believe it's the 6th. We maybe do that, but Shabbat Shalom, and let us all stand in the gap. Let us all try to be as righteous as we can. Do the mitzvot. Give tzedakah. Say prayer, whether out of the siddur or out of hiddabut, which is out of our heart. And let us all stand in the gap for our community, whether they know it or not. Shabbat Shalom.
Just
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I just wanted to, I've said this before, but the woman that Elisha helped in this story, according to legend, according to Midrash, was actually the widow of the prophet Obadiah, and he was he was one of the people who helped the prophets survive by, he helped to hide them in a cave, and he would borrow money, according to legend, from one of Ahab's sons, I think, if I remember correctly, but he lent it to him with interest. And so that's how he accumulated this debt. But he borrowed money to feed the prophets that he was hiding in the cave, basically from Jezebel. And for his kindness, his widow was miraculously provided for after his death through Elisha and through the miracle of the oil. And also wanted to just contrast, first of all, one of the similarities between Obadiah, the widow's husband, and Avraham was the way that they dealt not just with guests, but just with other people. Like, he cared about other people so much that he even went into debt feeding these people who they were trying to kill and persecute. And also that the contrast between Avraham and the men of Sodom was that Avraham, when he was communing with God, he broke communion with God in order to entertain guests. And that is highlighted in Judaism, that if you have guests, even if you're communing with God, you should pay attention to your guests. That it's even higher than communing with God, more important. And so this really shows us that you can't love God and hate strangers. These are strangers. These men weren't even necessarily brothers of Avraham. They were strangers. And yet he left communion with God in order to entertain people who he didn't know, were sent to him by God. And it was to contrast the way that the men of Sodom dealt with strangers, even without the midrash about the daughter who was punished for the stranger. But the men that came to visit Lot, they not only didn't feed him, but they wanted to sexually abuse them. That was the extent of it was like saying that was one of the worst things that you could do to a stranger. It's like the complete opposite of what Avraham did. And I'd also like to highlight that sexual abuse was the sin that was chosen to be the worst that you could treat a person. So your sexuality can either be a gift that you give to another person, or it can be a tool that you use to grossly abuse someone, which, short of murder, it's one of the worst things that you could do to someone. It's to sexually abuse them without the honor of marriage. And that's it. That's all I'm saying.
Baruch Hashem. One thing that jumped out at me when reading the text this week was that there were 2 angels that went to Sodom, and there was 4 people that left with them, and it was just like they each only had 2 hands, so that's all the people that they could bring with them was the 2 hands that they could drug Lot and his daughters out. They had to seems like they had to physically drag them out. So if they had 6 hands, they could have brought more, but that's all they could bring. They only had 2 hands each. So anyway, I thought that kind of jumped out at me. Never thought about it until. Yeah, it's sad that they had to be physically dragged out of such a terrible place, a terrible situation. Yeah, they could have been doubting, like, oh, it's not really going to happen. Who are these guys? That kind of thing. Could have doubted, but anyway, all right.